Hello sports fans, welcome to Super Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over my Week 4 college football rankings. So, going over last week's rankings and what those teams did in Week 3. Last week at number 10, I had Penn State. They were on a bye. Ninth, I had Utah. They beat Utah State 38-21. 8 was Missouri. They beat Boston College 27-21. 7 was Oregon. They destroyed Oregon State 49-14. 6 was Tennessee. They annihilated Kent State 71-0. 5 was Alabama. They dominated against Wisconsin, winning 41-10. 4 was Ole Miss. They easily beat Wake Forest 40-6. 3 was Ohio State. They were on a bye. 2 was Texas, who demolished UTSA 56-7. And 1 was Georgia, who barely beat Kentucky 13-12. But getting into this week's rankings, beginning at number 10, I've got Penn State. So Penn State remains at number 10 after their bye week. I thought about dropping them a spot and putting either Kansas State or Miami into my top 10, but I kept Penn State at 10, and next week they take on Kent State. 9, I've got Utah. So Utah beat Utah State 38-21. They'd off to a slow start, leading just 17-14 at the half, but they were much better in the second half. The Utah offense was good despite not having quarterback Cam Rising, as the offense scored 38 points and had 460 total yards of offense. Backup quarterback Isaac Wilson was good with 3 touchdowns, and the run game was effective for Utah, rushing for 221 yards on 5.4 yards a carry. And then the Utah defense was also solid. Utah, after a good win over Utah State, they come in at number 9. Number 8, I've got Missouri. So Missouri remains at number 8 after they beat Boston College 27-21. Missouri offense got off to a slow start, but they finished having a pretty solid game. Quarterback Brady Cook had 2 touchdowns, 1 passing, 1 rushing, and receiver Luther Burden was great with 6 catches for 117 yards and a touchdown. Missouri also ran the ball effectively, rushing for 176 yards. Then the defense for Missouri allowed their first points of the season, but overall they played a solid game, holding a good Boston College rushing offense to just 1.9 yards a carry, and they also forced 2 turnovers. But Missouri, after a good win over Boston College, they're at number 8. 7, I've got Oregon. So Oregon beat rival Oregon State 49-14, and this was a much-needed big win for Oregon, because they played a couple of close games to start the season, but it was good to see them actually blow out an opponent. The Oregon offense was great. Dylan Gabriel threw 291 yards and 2 touchdowns, while also adding 64 yards and another touchdown on the ground. The Oregon run game was good with 240 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns. 2 of them came from Jordan James. Plus receiver Tez Johnson was good with 7 catches for 110 yards. And then the Oregon defense played well, allowing just 14 points. But Oregon, after a dominant win over their rival Oregon State, they remained at number 7. Number 6, I've got Tennessee. So Tennessee destroyed Kent State 71-0. The offense was insane, putting up 71 points and 740 yards of offense. The offense actually scored 65 of their 71 points in the first half. But Tennessee ran the ball extremely effectively. They finished with 456 rushing yards and 6 rushing touchdowns, while averaging 8.3 yards per carry. And 4 of their 6 touchdowns on the ground came from running back Dylan Sampson, who's actually gotten off to an insane start to start the season. The defense for Tennessee was also great, not allowing a point, and allowing just 112 total yards. But Tennessee, after an insane big win over Kent State, they are now outscoring their opponents 191-13 in their first 3 games. Tennessee is at number 6. Number 5, I've got Alabama. So Alabama remains at number 5 after a dominant 41-10 win over Wisconsin. The Alabama offense was great and led by a 5-touchdown performance from Jalen Milroe, as he had 196 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns, plus 75 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Freshman receiver Ryan Williams continued to have a great start to the season, as he had 4 catches for 74 yards and a touchdown, and the Alabama defense was also good, holding Wisconsin to just 10 points and forcing 2 turnovers. Alabama, after an easy win over Wisconsin, remains at number 5. Number 4, I've got Ole Miss. So Ole Miss remains at 4 after a win over Wake Forest 40-6. The Ole Miss offense had their lowest point total of the season, but they were still good with 40 points and 649 yards of offense. Quarterback Jackson Dart was great with 377 passing yards and 3 total touchdowns, 2 passing, 1 rushing. The Ole Miss run game was also extremely good, led by Henry Parrish with 148 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Ole Miss as a team ran for 272 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Ole Miss defense was great, allowing just 6 points and forcing a couple of turnovers, but Ole Miss is very similar to Tennessee. They're outscoring their opponents by a ridiculous amount in their first 3 games. They're outscoring their opponents 168-9 in their first 3 games. But Ole Miss, after a win over Wake Forest, remains at number 4. Third, I've got Ohio State. They had a bye. They're comfortably at number 3. Next week, they take on Marshall. Number 2, I've got Texas. So Texas dominated against UTSA, winning 56-7. And the Texas offense was great, scoring 56 points. And they did so without starting quarterback Quinn Ewers for most of the game, as Ewers left the game early in the second quarter with a strained abdomen. So that forced Arch Manning into the game, which was really his first meaningful snaps in a close game. But Arch Manning was great with non-completions on 12 attempts for 223 yards and 4 touchdowns. He also had 53 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Texas also had 2 receivers go over 100 yards, as Ryan Wingo had 3 catches for 127 yards and a touchdown, and Isaiah Bond had 5 catches for 103 yards and 2 touchdowns. But Texas, after their great win over UTSA, they've remained at number 2, but the injury to Quinn Ewers is something to keep an eye on. And at number 1, I have Georgia. So I am keeping Georgia at number 1, although they weren't good, beating Kentucky just 13-12. The offense was bad, scoring just 13 points, which was their lowest point total since week 1 of the 2021 season. But the offense did not play well. They threw the ball for just 160 yards, couldn't run the ball, averaging just 3.4 yards a carry. But the Georgia defense was dominant as usual, allowing just 12 points, and Georgia defense still hasn't allowed a touchdown on the season, and they forced Kentucky to settle for 4 field goals. But despite the fact that it wasn't pretty for Georgia, they still got the win and have now won 42 straight regular season games, and they remain at number 1. And here are my updated college football playoff predictions. So I'm only making one change, and that is to the 12-seeded team in the playoff, or who I think will be the Group of 5 conference champion. I've gone back and forth on this for the past couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, I had Memphis. Last week, I changed it to Boise State. Now I'm changing it back to Memphis, because Memphis, they beat Florida State. And I know Florida State's really not that good, as they're 0-3 after a horrible start. But even if Florida State isn't very good this year and they end up going like 7-5, a win over a Power 5 team is still a good win, and that could be a deciding factor when comparing Memphis and Boise State. But that is the only change I have in my college football playoff predictions. But those are my Week 4 college football rankings and my updated playoff predictions. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss any of their upcoming videos. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.